Sociocast presents coverage of the 2019 election for the presidency and vice presidency of the American Sociological Association. I'm Joseph Cohen from Queen's College. To give voters a better sense of the candidates, we asked the four major office candidates to answer 7 questions about the discipline, the association, and their vision for both. To hear the other candidates, visit www.sociocast.org/ASA 2019. I hope you enjoyed the interview. All right, we're here with Jennifer Earl, professor of sociology at the University of Arizona. She is a vice presidential candidate for the American Sociological Association. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Could you begin by telling us about yourself and your work?
Sure. I'm broadly interested in social change processes, and I've studied this by studying social movements, so broadly how people try to change the world in their terms, through sociolegal research, so how major institutions like the law often try to attempt to control or constrain those changes, although sometimes the law may enable it as well. And then through research on media and social and digital technologies, which to me represents both something that may affect how people try to change the world, how authorities try to stop that change, and how the pervasive use of those technologies may itself represent influence for social change. So within my work on social movement studies, I've focused on social movement repression, broadly how people try to control or constrain protest. I've also looked at how people use social and digital media to try to help their efforts. And more recently, in the last 5-6 years of my work, I've also started to look at how young people in particular face obstacles and have opportunities where they try to make change. I teach in all of these areas, as well as teaching a gen ed class at my university that's to mostly freshmen called Social Issues in America. I enjoy teaching all of those classes, including that large class, because I hope that it's helping a large group of people experience what a sociological lens has to offer and to learn more about research about their everyday life and the world around them. Another part of my work as a sociologist involves outreach and trying to extend the meaning of and impact of my work beyond academic communities. So I've written op-eds. I'm a Public Voices fellow from a couple years ago, and I had written op-eds both before and since then. Along with Thomas Elliott and Tom Mayer, I run the Informing Activist series, which is basically a set of videos where we pose questions to leading social movement scholars, asking them to do translational work, where we ask them to answer a question such as, how can I help recruit people to my movement? And we ask them to answer that question in 3 to 5 minutes using the best research they have available. We post those in video format on the Mobilizing Ideas blog. And the main audience is it's geared to be for young people. So if you're a young person looking to get involved, you're already in a movement, you're looking to lead or organize. And then finally, the last part of my work as a sociologist is professional. So while I do the same kind of mentoring of students that probably most of us do, I also have been really invested in mentoring young faculty. And so I've been the part of starting mentoring programs in several sections, an active participant in mentoring programs. And then obviously, since I'm a candidate for an office, I try to serve the organizations that help support our field, whether that's serving the ASA through, in my prior experience, section roles, through helping NSF as a reviewer or panelist, serving as an editorial in an editorial board or an associate editor or something like that. So that's a little bit about me.
In your opinion, what do sociologists do? What's our role in society? What's the purpose of our profession?
You know, when I saw this question, I really thought about how to answer it because it starts off with my own opinion. But then I thought what you really want to know is, what would I do if I were elected vice president? What would I do in that role? And so I'm answering this from the perspective of someone who is running for an office in a professional association, which means that it's very much my job, if I were elected to that position, to help further my colleagues in the broadest sense. I don't mean my colleagues here at University of Arizona. I mean you, I mean your listeners. I mean sociologists who are members and non-sociologists who are members of ASA. It'd be my job to help forward their work, our work in the broadest sense. So I don't see this role as really about playing umpire about what issues or methods or theories should be privileged above others, but instead really working to help us collectively improve our institutional resources and capacities so that we can do more work and have that work be more impactful. I guess in some ways, when I was thinking about this answer, I thought someone may hear that and think, well, that's a little bit of a cop-out. He asked you, in your opinion. But I think one of the things that, I mean in a very deep and genuine way, that I love about sociology is that there is not a singular, in my mind, answer to what do sociologists do. And in many ways, nor should there be. Sociology is a very broad field. Amongst the social sciences, probably one of the broadest, if not the broadest field. And I mean that topically, theoretically, and methodologically. I think, indeed, we are a better field precisely because we are so broad, because our field embraces so many different interests, so many different perspectives, and so many different points of view. So I think the sort of first thing to know about how I try to do service is that I don't try to do service by doing service to advance my own view of what something should be. I think when you're in a service role, you're there to support the organization and the members who make it up. And so my job isn't to try to pick what I think sociologists should do and then to try to make an association that makes that more likely. It is to try to ask, what do members wish that they could do better and how could we help that? Now, if you pressed me, I guess I'd probably, give some very broad definition of sociology, like advancing human understanding of social organization, social inequality, and social change through, theoretical and empirical research. But even there, you'd see my view of the field is very broad, and I think that that's a really big strength of our field. And so I guess the thing I would really focus on is not what do I think I'm doing as a sociologist, because that's what I do in my own work, not what I'd be doing in an elected office. What I'd be doing in an elected office is trying to listen to what people want and then try to figure out how can I use my skills to advance that.
In your view, what is the ASA's job? Whom does it serve and what does it do? What is its role in the discipline?
Well, as you might guess from my prior answer, at the end of the day, ASA is a membership organization, which means the very real and practical answer to that question is it serves its members. It can do that in a lot of different ways. That can be public advocacy about the importance of social science research. It could be supporting new research through internal funding mechanisms. It could be individual membership development. It could be lots of other things. But at the end of the day, what ASA does is serve its members and serve the collective interests of that membership. So I very much think of the role of vice president as a service job. It's trying to figure out how to help forward those broad organizational goals that we share and chip in. I will say that I think that an important part of ASA that is a lot of people don't talk about enough is that for most people, their real connection to ASA isn't strongest through the overall organization, but rather it's most deep and impactful through their connections to individual sections. And indeed, that reflects my own experience at ASA, which has largely been focused on sections. I've chaired 2 different sections. I've served and chaired on the committee on sections, and I've served in many other service roles within the 3 sections that I've been a long-term member. And I think pretty much if I think about almost any of my ASA meeting participation, almost all of my ASA-related service, sections are really critical to that. In my own experience on the committee on sections is that that's true for most, lots and lots, for sure, of our members. So I think when someone thinks about ASA, they both need to think about the larger ASA-wide issues, but also how to support the health, vitality, and governance of sections. I think part of this is that the ASA has been somewhat overdue on listening to what members think about the organization. And the current membership survey initiative that's happening, I think, is one of many important steps that we can take. And I'm glad to see ASA already taking it to understand better what members want, how they feel about what we're providing as an organization, and how we can improve. Some sections have started doing this on their own as well. And I think that that's really important. I'd like to see the ASA support sections be able to do that same sort of introspection. Finally, I think it's important to help ASA continue to think about how it can be as inclusive as possible. To the extent to which the ASA is a place that provides a professional forum through which there is a flow of scarce resources, whether that's networks or opportunities or jobs or anything else, I think inclusivity is a really important thing for the organization and for individual sections to worry about. So I guess if I summed up, like, what's the ASA's job? It's to serve its members. But a big part of that is actually, I think, listening to members on a regular basis, finding ways to find out what members want, and also trying to pitch initiatives, not just at the overall organizational level, but in the real day-to-day interactions that they have through those organizations' sections.
What is your sense of the biggest issues facing our discipline? Do you have ideas about how to engage them?
I think a big issue that I haven't talked about yet is that there are really changing societal views about the legitimacy and importance of research. And I think that this is really important and represents both a major short-term and long-term threat to not just our field, but to democracy. In a very real way, we need to help people and state actors continue to understand the importance of research broadly, of science, social science research broadly, and to really understand the way in which research on the world is important to having a better world. And our association, in partnership with other professional associations, I think really needs to continue to prioritize understanding and influencing these shifts in perception of research and sociology, because if people don't want to listen in the long term, it's not going to matter how much we have to say. And I think that that's something we need to take really, really seriously. I think having enough resources and jobs to sustain our field is critical, and in many important ways is tied to the larger social recognition of the legitimacy and importance of research. That said, I think that there are lots of ways that ASA as an organization can help our field get more resources, but also can do well to help individual members help build their careers and get more resources for their work. As I mentioned before, I think inclusivity is really important. And I think it's a doable effort, but I think it's something that you can't take your hand off of the wheel of. I think ASA needs to think about inclusivity at this larger organizational level, and I think in many ways it's tried to do so and needs to continue to do so. But I think it also needs to help sections, since inclusivity is, and really any issue in the ASA, most of it, the rubber meets the road when people get involved in sections. And right now I can speak from experience in section governance that the ways in which ASA supports sections for trying to address issues about inclusivity could really use a great deal of improvement. Inclusivity, I think, is not just about a pipeline, it's about the experience that members have. And there are lots of ways in which the organization and sections need to be thinking about how different axes of power and different axes of inequality are influencing our actual member experiences of the organization and the field more broadly. I would really like to see ASA continue to work on these issues, both building on areas where there's been some recent success, but also really openly acknowledging some areas we haven't made as much progress on, where we do need to dramatically improve and improve quickly.
I solicited questions from colleagues, and here are the three that we chose for this election series. The first is, if you are elected, what goals will motivate your vice presidency? What will be distinct about the ASA under your guidance?
Well, I mean, one thing to remember to start off is that I'm a nominee for vice president, which means that um, my answer is, and the answer of the other person running for vice president, were the second most important answers because we are not going to have as much influence as the president's will. So I think in one way I want to, sort of remind people that part of my job as vice president would be to try to help support whoever the membership elects as president in their goals for the association. But I can also tell you about what I would hope to influence. And key issues that I mentioned before that I take really seriously, all of those issues play out in sections. And so as an organization, I would really like to see the ASA better understand the role that sections play in members' experience of the organization and better understand how to help sections that are thriving get even better and how to help struggling sections improve. Right now, I think the ASA has a sort of general understanding that sections are important, but I think the extent to which people's lived experience of ASA is largely through sections does not affect the actual processes of ASA governance, the flows of money, the sets of rules that ASA uses. And so I think it's really important that ASA pay as an organization much more attention to the health and vitality of sections and how to improve them. I think this means that in the same way that ASA as an organization is trying to understand what members want, they need to much more seriously understand that those members are nested within sections and support sections in their efforts to understand what their membership wants. And when sections aren't trying, maybe prod them a little bit to try to get them to listen to their members. But I also think that ASA needs to think about how they can better empower sections to do what they need to do in order to advance their own goals and ASA goals. So I can say, well, at many times as a section chair, working with ASA governance is great. At other times, you want to make initiatives that make sense both with your section goals and with organizational goals, and you can't get what you need from ASA. So I'll give you one specific example. As section chair of CBSM, we have a committee who's charged with membership diversity and inclusivity. And we wanted to try to understand the dynamics of inclusivity in our section along a range of dimensions. And although ASA has that data, ASA basically said, we can't share that data with you as a section. We can give you aggregate numbers, but we can't tell you things that are really important to actually trying to improve that. I think that ASA needs to really think about sections are where inclusivity happens, not just the ASA is where inclusivity happens. Sections is where people really get invested in this organization, not just at the broader ASA level. And so all of these different issues that we've been talking about, for me, what's really important is that I bring to ASA a focus on, hey, this happens through sections and we need to be trying to help sections do better.
Do you think that the claimed, quote, divide, unquote, in sociology between dispassionate empiricism and activism, do you think it's accurate or overstated? Do you think that this type of talk is generative and productive or divisive? What will you do to make sure everyone feels represented in the Big Ten?
Well, I hope that one of the things that's come through really clearly is that I don't think that the job at the ASA or my job, if I were elected as vice president, would be to play umpire between different views in the field. At a very basic level, to me, this question is an issue of academic freedom. People have to make up their own minds, and when they do, reasonable people can, will, and do continue to disagree with one another about these issues. So I don't think that this is for me to decide for our profession, nor do I think it's for ASA to decide for the profession. Indeed, I think, just as I talked earlier about how I think that a big tent discipline is really one of our strengths, I think that disagreement, when it's thoughtful and not personal, can really help us to better understand our own views, and that sometimes we even change our views. So I think whether this is about this particular issue or other axes of disagreement in our profession, that there is always going to be disagreement. And so it's not really as helpful to think about, is this disagreement productive or divisive, but rather to ask, because it's going to exist, how could we create conditions that would make it more productive and less divisive? What are the processes that we could put in place that might allow more generative discussions of this? Because I don't think it's the case that whether we're talking about this issue or any other issue where people disagree in the field, that there's going to be finally an answer where we all agree. Instead, there's going to be constant discussion about it, and I think we should just acknowledge that that's true, and then to try to seek benefit from it. And I think that benefit can be that when exchanges are thoughtful and not personal, they can really help to forward a conversation and get everyone, even if they're not changing their position on something, to better understand their view. So I guess the second thing I would say about this is that I think that ASA can help to broadly serve all of these different views by members as professional priorities. So if someone feels that they want to do research and not be very focused on outreach or how that work is going to be used, I think that's a thing that ASA can help that person do. If someone really wants to do work that is geared towards its impact outside of the academy, I think that's something that ASA can broadly support members in doing. I think there are lots of practical ways that we can support those different views, and I think it is important that we support all of those different views because it's a membership organization. So I guess I would say that I think ASA already does try to support research, teaching, outreach, lobbying, activism, etc. And I think that it's important that ASA continue to do all of these things. And instead of thinking about ASA or me as a place that would play umpire to these, we could think about ASA as a place where it will always be a conversation, and that what ASA can do is try to help it be more productive and more generative, less divisive, and also not because we're not disagreeing, but because the way in which that disagreement takes place is not personal and more thoughtful, and that we can help support all of those different visions of work.
Sociologists are concerned about inequality, and we know that a lot of inequality exists in our discipline. Virtually everything we do is suffused with inequality, and some argue unfairness. The teaching we deliver our undergrads, access to good graduate programs, opportunities to get good faculty jobs, access to research money and platform, and so on. Which inequalities within sociology concern you, and do you have ideas about how to engage it?
I think this is a really important question, and I want to come at it in a couple different ways. First, I've mentioned that I think inclusivity is really important, and it's not just a pipeline issue, it's an experience issue. And I think that ASA, as I already mentioned, needs to both at the organizational level and help to empower sections at the section level to better understand who's in our section membership, what their experiences are like, and how their experiences differ within our membership, and what we can do to improve the experiences of a range of different members. In my own experience in working in organizations, I think there's a couple real ways to accomplish that. First, most of us are social scientists because we believe that data matters. And so I think a very important thing that ASA does and could extend in doing is collect data on our profession as a profession, and axes of inequality and areas that inclusivity could be expanded. because I do think that data matters. I mean, I know there are lots of ways to equivocate about that, et cetera, but I hope that our colleagues in general are committed to an idea that we could learn something from research on our profession. I think another thing that I've learned about working with people is that a lot of times people aren't necessarily trying to obstruct change. They're just trying to accomplish a lot of different things, and change takes time and it takes effort. And so one of the things that you can do to really try to leverage change is to making changes easier for people. So if you can make high quality supports available and really accessible to people in roles and at times where they can use them, I think people are actually quite likely to adopt them and to make changes that without those supports they wouldn't make. So what's that mean in terms of ASA? Well, I think that basically we could really try to think about how could ASA use its efforts in different core areas to help collect information, data about inequality, and also to make it easier for people in different kinds of positions and roles in our association and in our discipline and in departments to act on that. So let me give you a really practical example. I think that there are ways the association could help directors of graduate studies think about inequality in admissions, think about how to improve inclusivity. There are lots of things that if director of graduate studies were provided very high quality, accessible aids, that could really matter a lot in departments. I think we could say the same thing for section chairs. I think we could say the same things for directors of undergraduate studies. We could say the same things for search committee members. And we could also say the same thing for members. So there's this new webinar series that ASA is running. I would love to see some webinars that deal with teaching and inequality. I would love to have some open conversations about textbook prices. I would love to have conversations that are about how can we support, if you want to reduce the cost of education to your students, what can you do? Like give somebody a checklist. What are the things they can go through? And I really think that a lot of people will do the right thing when you make the right thing easy for them. And so people can consider data and can consider these things when you facilitate them. And I think that the ASA has some really low-hanging fruit there to address. One issue that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but I want to mention in brief, because I think that the ASA and frankly universities need to start working on very seriously, is that in the coming years, there's going to be a huge impact of debt on our members and their careers. And that we know a lot about debt and inequality as a field. We're learning more and more about debt related to education. Our PhDs, whether that debt is coming from their graduate degrees or their undergraduates, are going to become young professors who have larger debt loads than young professors have ever had before. And that is going to be inflected with inequality in really important ways. And I see very real ways in which the association can start to think about debt and its impact on our members' careers that would let us get in front of some of these professional problems, as opposed to sort of letting that wave hit us and us come to the slow recognition as a field that this is something that we really have to think about and try to understand how to deal with, not just at an individual member level, but at institutional and organizational levels.
This has been SocioCast's coverage of the 2019 ASA presidential and vice presidential elections. For more, go to sociocast.org/ASA 2019. Our producer is Liseth Moreno. I'm Joe Cohen. Thanks for listening.